this comes at a timely moment because, as you know, that India is preparing for a very important AI summit in February 2026. So in many ways, this is a kind of a primer, and I hope there'll be more primers.
Meghalaya, for those who don't know, is India's cancer capital. And there are crazy number of breast cancer cases that come out of Meghalaya. There, if you're going to develop a technique or an AI solution that is going to, with the help of a machine, detect breast cancers in women, which we actually did, you cannot create something which has a tendency to give you a high number of false positives because it's life-changing. Telling somebody they have cancer when they might actually not have it is life-changing, especially for a poor household. It's life-shattering. So trust is the pinnacle, and trust is not something you do. Trust is something which is now a positioning tool. It's a commodity in itself.
How many of us watch content on smart TVs? All of you, right? Most smart TVs, by the way, I realized, is that they take 20 screenshots a second or a minute of the content that you're watching. So even if you're not doing it through your smart TV and you have not given consent really, they take screenshots and it's analyzed, and that's how they give predictive ads on your smart TV. So there is an option there. I mean, you can go and search New York Times for it and figure out how to disable it.
Increasingly in the age of AI, you cannot take that trust for granted. And trust, to my mind, comes through demand. If there is demand for trust, if people are vocal about understanding where data is coming from.
If it is Google or if it is IBM, one of the two, they introduced an AI where they worked with basic elements, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, ran all the millions and billions of permutations, and now they're discovering antibiotics for things like MRSA tuberculosis, which is fabulous, which would have taken decades of research.
All of us are trying to make sense of what AI is and how AI innovation is done. How do you crack into, the big picture out there? There are a lot of big players, etc.
Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. Today, we are here to have a discussion on something which is extremely important in today's time, artificial intelligence. We have two panel discussions today. Both of them are crucial and extremely important. Why? Because we understand and we navigate the past, present, and future of artificial intelligence. And we also try to understand and analyze that how India's evolving role is in terms of artificial intelligence. We're so glad to have our speakers here, our moderator, and as well as the audience. Today's event is hosted by the Geostrata, and I'm extremely lucky to tell you all about it. The Geostrata is a think tank wherein we mainly focus on spreading or basically putting forward the Indian perspective of global affairs. We do it through our panel discussions, we do it through expert sessions like these today, and we also do it through our online social media presence. Our audience loves to interact with us and to understand and analyze what future holds for us. And today's conversation is exactly on that. Our discussions this afternoon will focus on how, firstly, India has positioned itself on the world stage in the domain of artificial intelligence, and secondly, to also understand that how the industry and innovation align with each other. To guide us through these conversations, I'm very glad to welcome Dr. Swasti Rao today with us again. She was there with us during NATO India Youth Conference as well, and we're again very glad to have her today. And ma'am, you will be moderating the session, so I'll be passing on the mic to you. And also to our audience, please feel free to engage with us, to raise your questions during the Q&A rounds, and let's make this an interactive session. Passing the mic to Dr. Swasti Rao. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I really like the energy. Why I never say no to anything that comes to me from Geostrata is because I really like the youthful energy. They are always thriving with, and you guys are doing a great job. It is making a lot of impression, and it is also sort of building a reputation for you in India and abroad. So congratulations for that. I was just talking about it, to your team. As far as today's discussion is concerned, I think this is something which is very I think it would be correct to say it's a Pandora's box, and I think all of us are trying to make sense of what AI is and how AI innovation is done. How do you crack into, the big picture out there? There are a lot of big players, etc. me coming from a very geopolitics, security, and defense background, I've been fascinated with the role of AI in military technology. This is going to be the game changer, whether you're looking at it from defense, whether you're looking at it from any perspective. This is going to be the buzzword. And very happy to be moderating both the panels. In the first panel, of course, we have two speakers, and I was just reading their details. So both of them are experts in their own rights, and I myself am looking forward to learning quite a few things because I have many questions on AI itself. But this comes at a timely moment because, as you know, that India is preparing for a very important AI summit in February 2026. So in many ways, this is a kind of a primer, and I hope there'll be more primers. In short, what sometimes we also, mention in our lectures is that India's AI policy is dependent on three basic pillars that are called the three sutras that are sort of dependent on seven chakras, right? So there's a very nice tonality to it. It has a very India-ness to it. But there is so much more than just the chakras and these details and the sutras. So without further ado, let me just introduce the two speakers. The first speaker is Vivek Abraham. He's the head of public policy and government affairs at Salesforce. So Vivek, a very warm welcome to you and looking forward to learning a lot from you. And then we have Ayushi Sadna. She's a specialist of AI and data policy at the World Economic Forum. So let's just start. And because this particular panel is on how do we make India the AI use case capital. So of course, if I start from this very thing, Vivek, what really is the AI use case capital? What is the case capital? As I understand, it is perhaps about trying to gather more and more data. The Prime Minister says that we have to use AI for solving socio-economic, socio-political problems, also strategic problems. But what is the AI use case?
Are you asking what is a use case, or what is the use case that?
What is the use case? I mean, how do we understand that better for an audience that are not really trained in AI?
Got it. So first of all, I want to apologize for being late. I'm sorry. I intended to be here half an hour earlier, but I wish I had AI in my life already. So that's a use case that we can probably do with. But a use case is essentially how do you use AI in your day-to-day or in your work, or in any particular fields, applications. How does AI improve, enhance, or probably bring about a particular change that may not have existed before? I'm sure all of you must be using some AI like ChatGPT or Gemini or even the WhatsApp AI that is there to, write your messages or schedule your calendar invites or recommendations and travel. So these are use cases, okay? And that is the most common use case that's happening in the country right now. You also have image generation. Some of it is great, some of it is not so great. There are some rules that are being framed around it on what can be and what cannot be done. There is some interesting case law that is being written as we speak on what can be used in images or what can be used as AI generated images. So all of that, I think as AI gets used, you get more use cases or cases where AI is used. I make it sound simple, but summarization is a very powerful use case. We were talking to members of parliament, and if you think about it, I don't know how many of you have worked with members of parliament, but they usually have very lean offices. They may have one or two staffers. And they have to manage their entire constituency, which can run in the lakhs, right? And all of these constituent members write to the MP or call in, and they have grievances, complaints, and issues that need to be addressed. Now, with the volume of information that's coming in, without AI, a member of parliament can only hope to maybe do a fraction of what is presented to him or her, right? But with AI, they get a bird's eye view of what are the real issues, what are the major pain points, what is the one thing that I can do in my tenure as an MP that will solve 50% or 90% of the problem. And that is a huge advancement of how MPs can work in their constituency. Likewise, imagine AI summarizing patient case histories. Okay, so you have some experiments and pilots being run where you have an ambient AI, so an AI that's listening to everything. So there's an AI that's listening to our conversations. And as the doctor and patient speak or talk to each other, the AI summarizes, but also starts looking at previous cases, looking at what's known in the medical world, and starts suggesting diagnoses or prognoses as the conversation progresses. Obviously, the final recommendation has to be the doctor because that's the law as of now. But, so just imagine a doctor now is suddenly augmented by the knowledge of whatever is there in the medical universe. It's not just one person that you're dependent on. You certainly have that entire encyclopedia at your command. And that will significantly improve health outcomes. And that itself, and so now you imagine you can remove the doctor out of the equation and you can start having outposts in areas where you don't have doctors. I mean, this country has a significant shortage of doctors. So you create outposts where you have an AI bot listening to patient histories, people who walk in. You have somebody who is trained to do minor tests like blood tests or blood pressure, or they can attach instruments and the readings get fed into the AI. And you start the conversation with a doctor on a video screen with a very detailed analysis of what the patient is coming with. That itself augments the doctor's abilities to work with, from 100 patients, now suddenly that capability increases to 1,000 patients. And with a fraction of the cost that would be required to deploy that many doctors in so many regions. So summarization in itself is a very, very powerful tool. And I think we are all discovering exactly how it can be used. But beyond that, I think what's really interesting, and obviously, you've talked about defense. So I recently saw an application where AI was being used for tracking, So this person held up a bottle which the AI had never seen before. And then as that person took the bottle across the room or took it out of the room and brought it back or took it in any orientation, the AI camera recognized it and, was tracking the trajectory of the bottle in the room. Now, just imagine you deploy that AI on a chip, on a drone, and let's say you click on a target on a screen thousands of miles away. You're able to track a particular target across kilometers, across various satellite grids, and now you don't need human intel just for that particular target. And you can put any number of drones in the air, you can track any number of targets in the air, and that is your one defense application. It's the same technology, it's the same underlying technology, but now you've introduced another element to it. You can use AI to read your DNA or your genome, which is essentially letters, right? It is encoded as letters. So you can do that. You can suddenly start, the entire sequence you can study and figure out where are the genetic errors coming. Yeah. And you have technology where you can have very precision genetic engineering to repair one pair or one letter in the genome. And that can significantly improve health outcomes for a lot of people. Beyond that, I'm not sure if it is Google or if it is IBM, one of the two. They introduced an AI where you could, where they worked with basic elements, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, ran all the millions and billions of permutations, and now they're discovering antibiotics for things like MRSA tuberculosis, which is fabulous, which would have taken decades of research. But, you were able to eliminate thousands of potential candidates just by running those experiments in your system, and then come up with viable candidates, and then they just track those candidates. So I'm just saying the use cases can be unlimited, and I think we're just still discovering them. But the way we're using AI right now, even though it's quite basic, can be quite powerful.
Right. Well, if I can come to you, Ayushi, because see, the thing is that Vivek really alluded to a lot of things, and because it was also the first set of, and we're just getting started, so this is also just warming up, in for lack of a better term. But as you hear all these discussions on AI, of course, you need policy frameworks. He mentioned the usages, he mentioned the practical value of why really we cannot really do without AI, and using AI and deploying AI solutions can truly make a remarkable difference. But what policy frameworks are then needed to enable this innovation? Because you have also this issue of compromising trust and privacy and those kind of things. So, in your perspective, how do you then stitch this together with what just Vivek said? And also take your time. Like I said, we are warming up, it's the first round.
Yeah. So thanks, Swasti, and thanks, Vivek. I think you've laid the stage for me as well to talk on the questions around trust and privacy that you raise. I think if there's anything that you will take away today from the discussion, and I think ultimately both the discussions might end up on that word, which is the big word today, which is trust.
Right.
All these cases that you're seeing increasingly around the globe of IT services or consulting firms being mired in various investigations. Recently, there was a big IT service firm that paid penalties to the US regulator. Or if there are questions around insider training or fairness issues or pay issues or biases, or these all questions come increasingly because trust is something which is systemically lacking or has started to lack in the system, in the entire engine which runs this economy. I'm not going to say that it is a new event. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen often or this hasn't happened before. But trust is something going forward in the age of AI. You will have to stop seeing trust as something that you do once your product has been developed, but trust is something that you do from the get-go. Once you think this is my use case, Vivek alluded to healthcare use cases. That is one domain where you cannot not integrate trust from the beginning because the stakes are too high, right? So I represent the forum, and there was a great initiative that we did in Meghalaya. Meghalaya, for those who don't know, is India's cancer capital. And there are crazy number of breast cancer cases that come out of Meghalaya. Now, there, if you're going to develop a technique or an AI solution that is going to, with the help of a machine, detect the breast cancers in women, which we actually did, you cannot create something which has a tendency to give you a high number of false positives because it's life-changing. Telling somebody they have cancer when they might actually not have it is life-changing, especially for a poor household, it's life-shattering. So trust is the pinnacle. And trust is not something you do. Trust is something which is now a positioning tool. It's a commodity in itself. We start asking questions around what exactly happens to consulting services. You have the big four, you have other consulting firms. I think I see mostly students in the audience, so I'm sure many people are aiming to be a part of those groups one day. But there are increasingly more and more questions around what happens to the role of those consulting firms in the age of AI, because a lot of work that you would do, a smart AI or a smart LLM that we use today can also do.
Yeah.
So what is the main product that you're offering then? Is it the price war that you're engaged in? Are you able to provide that consulting services cheaper? Maybe. Is it a talent war that you're engaged in? Is your talent better than the other consulting firm? My personal opinion is that both of these things, you eventually find a competitive ground on. It is easier to find a competitive ground within these consulting firms. Ultimately, they get competitive and they hit an equilibrium and they offer the same price or they offer the same kind of talent. Trust is something that not everybody is going to be able to offer. And clients are increasingly asking for it. I talk of consulting in a talk of AI because you really have to take the same framework to AI. And this is the first thing, the trust and the accuracy of the AI solution itself that you're using in various use cases, healthcare, agri, SMEs, etc. The second component of trust comes around the data. The systems, the AI systems that we use, they are nothing without the data that they run on, that they have been perhaps trained on. So, of course, we have the DPDP Act, the Data Protection Bill, that has given us all the kind of mandates around protecting people's data. But increasingly, if you are going to start looking at those mandates as just something you do later, or you give it, you take it on the fly, you take it on the go, and maybe when a sanction is raised, you're going to respond to it. There is a regulatory team which is going to take care of it if something wrong happens. I think you cannot do that anymore.
Okay.
People need to know that their data is safe wherever it is going. I have increasingly also in my day-to-day life become more paranoid about, accepting cookies and what is really happening. I mean, there was a very interesting video I watched the other day on the dark web, what really goes on in the dark web. And I immediately went to my Gmail and checked where all the data leaks have happened. And to my amusement, there were some 50 sites where my data had already been leaked. And I was just finding about it right now, but this was going on since last 5 years. So increasingly in the age of AI, you cannot take that trust for granted. And trust, to my mind, comes through demand. If there is demand for trust, if people are vocal about understanding where data is coming from, if people are interested in understanding that what is the data provenance of a particular AI solution, what percentage of data is actually consented, what is the data lineage, who are the owners of that data, is adequate consent been taken for that particular data. So those are the two things that I did want to talk about. Coming to policy frameworks that you mentioned, Swasti, I think the basic policy framework that would then be needed is at least some form of lightweight certification.
Okay.
And only the government or only a regulatory body can perhaps do it. So there is some form of lightweight certification on what is the data provenance of a solution, what is the accuracy of a solution, what kind of models have been used, what kind of results were observed during red teaming, what was the model behavior on critical failure nodes, etc. If you do not have a body which is ultimately taking some of this into account, then we are probably going to be in a problem. And I'm aware MeitY has released the AI guidelines recently, and we have maintained that we do not want a regulation heavy kind of a framework. We are more pro innovation, but then India can really lie in the sweet spot between a US regulatory kind of an approach and an EU regulatory kind of an approach.
Yeah.
EU is more regulation heavy, US is more innovation heavy. So if we can lie somewhere in between, then we'd probably be treading the middle ground.
Now, very interesting that you mentioned all this, because that was what I was going to ask you. For my next round, there is a perception, and I think part of it is also true, because obviously it goes into how different countries approach it. So it is said that the US innovates, China replicates, Europe regulates, and what does India do? So, and I'm asking you this question, why? Because while there are, you mentioned that MeitY has come up with an institutional framework, but you would like that to be less stringent on regulation. And I ask this because recently somebody asked me about the latest drone policy draft that India has come up with in 2025. And in 2021, there was a framework. So India had come up officially with a framework for what its drone policy is going to be. And you know that drone is the thing today when you talk about warfare or anything, okay, just as AI is. And of course, there are AI-enabled drones, so there is a linking. So what I want to come to is that while the framework stressed the importance of keeping the ecosystem resilient, flexible, but what you see in the drone policy draft of 2025, which has drawn a lot of criticism and visceral criticism, is that they have actually doubled down on regulation. They have made it so difficult, the certification, access to funding, etc., have become so difficult that probably it can never really see the light of the day in the manner in which it is presumed. Because the whole idea is that if you read the government policy papers on this, they want India to come up with AI solutions, and particularly through startups, and they want to have a big input from there. But how do you do that if you are not able to maintain that balance between regulation and flexibility? So in that, and I want to put that as a question first to Vivek and then to you, almost the same question. What do you think are the real challenges? Because to my mind, one of the biggest challenges that I see is that while the big players have access to money, have access to everything, but if you talk about a startup culture in AI, they don't have access to money. They don't have access to funding. That's what they keep coming to again and again. Second, to my mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that all the big stakeholders, while there is on the policy papers so much of thrust on developing a whole of government approach, but you do see the reality is siloized. We continue operating in silos. So Vivek, your thoughts on this, and then Ayushi, I'm going to be coming to you with the same things, but how do we resolve, first, what are the challenges and how do we resolve them?
You've basically described my job. No, but I want to start by adding to your paranoia, by the way. So I just learned this. How many of us watch content on smart TVs? All of you, right? Most smart TVs, by the way, I realized, is that they take 20 screenshots a second or a minute of the content that you're watching. So even if you're not doing it through your smart TV and you have not given consent really, they take screenshots and it's analyzed, and that's how they give predictive ads on your smart TV. So there is an option there. I mean, you can go and search New York Times for it and figure out how to disable it. But I want to take like a hard U-turn on this. And, yes, there is a lot of emphasis on trust. And I think without trust, we will not get anywhere. I think that's fundamental. I think that's well understood. And I think it is imperative that any player in the ecosystem understands that without that trust, they're not going to get very far, right? And I think when I say we, the industry and a lot of our peers essentially have been working towards building a framework that allows us to innovate and also make money at the same time.
Of course.
And then also do it in a safe way. And, you said the US innovates, China replicates, maybe India complicates, I don't know. So
that's a good one. I'm going to remember that. Okay.
No, but what I mean by that is there are very complex scenarios. There's so much diversity. There are so many languages where there's hardly any data, so many social contexts, so many use cases. So I think the one thing that we have really drilled down on and put a head down on is we've got all of this wonderful technology that's being built across the world. How do we really harness it for our social context, for our particular use case? And I think what we want to, essentially the theme of this event today is how do we become the use case capital of the world, right? Because if you can do that in India, I'm sure there are any number of use cases that are applicable in India, but if you can do that in India, you can probably find a place across the world that you can use that use case in. I just want to hit upon a very basic fundamental concept here, which a lot of people find very hard to analyze in this particular context, but it's important to keep it in mind. See, in technology, and you may feel free to disagree with me on this, I think it's important to understand that as long as you have an incremental benefit, okay, I think that's a way to go. I think that's where your progress vector should point. Okay, what I mean by that is you have a certain way of doing things, let's say without AI right now. Okay, now with AI, does the situation become better? It doesn't have to be 100%, but does it become incrementally better? If that is the use case, if that is the situation, then yes, then the decision should be yes. We should move forward with it. And I think, we have as a society, made contracts with many technologies. And what I mean by that is, let's say, take aviation for instance. I mean, not the best example, but I think it drives the point home very well. See, aviation as a technology is essential to society, but it is also fundamentally extremely risky, right? And I think there is a way that you can make it 100% safe. Okay, so if you invest, let's say, $1 million per ticket per passenger on every flight on every aircraft in the world, then probably you're close to 99.99% safety. Okay, because then you're going to cover that passenger in some suit, or you'll have parachutes for everything, and you'll have other paraphernalia flying around and all of that, and you'll have complete maintenance checkups and all of that, right? But we don't do that. Okay, and it's as morbid as it sounds. We as society have decided that, you know what, we are okay with this level of safety and no further, because if any more safety, then we have to spend a lot more. Okay, I don't think we have explicitly made that contract, but we have accepted this. Okay, and I think when these accidents happen, I think the emphasis on what happens in process in the background becomes a lot more in the foreground, and then we pay a lot of attention to it. Has the maintenance been done? Has the pilot been trained, etc., etc.? But then it again fades back into the background, because eventually we realize that all of this costs money, and there is a cost to it, to all of us, right? So I think we will also eventually reach that point where we will accept that there is a certain invasion of privacy in our lives to enable AI. Okay, I'm not advocating a particular stance here, but I'm just saying that will happen with any progression of technology. That line gets drawn, saying that I will not give complete visibility to my life to an AI, but I need some enablement here. Without that, AI will not function for me. And I think that's where the challenge is. How do we draw regulation before we know where that line is going to be drawn? And I think that gets sort of sorted out as the technology progresses, as we discover new use cases. And I foresee we will have different lines or different levels of comfort in different sectors. In health, maybe we'll have very, very little tolerance for inaccuracies or invasion of privacy. In things like movie recommendations or creatives, maybe that line is much, much further ahead, right? So I think that is a critical challenge. And I think from where I stand or my company works, I think we believe that we should not be that uncomfortable with using AI. And I think in other cases, we must be a little more circumspect. That's where we are.
Right, and if I can come to Ayushi. So he said that India complicates. Do you think India complicates? And also, like
I didn't
said,
say that. I just said maybe.
okay, let's say maybe India complicates. No, but I mean, since I sort of drew my own parallels with how we are developing let's say, the drone policy draft, and you do see that in India there seems to be this bit of a problem. But Ayushi, please tell me, in your opinion, what are the real challenges when you look at India? And of course, you can draw from all over the world because we are not in a silo here. And what are the possible solutions for that?
Sure. So I genuinely feel that this time we're not complicating it.
Okay.
We're waiting it out, maybe, for the lack of a better rhyme, but kind of just roll with me. The challenge I see, but I think before I go to the challenge, I want to reiterate Vivek's point on regulation being a whole spectrum, right? You cannot expect regulation to be as heavy in all sectors as drone tech, space tech, because kind of the downside of things going wrong, the stakes are equally high. But then there is also competition that affects regulation, right? Because there are national agendas which are competing with each other right now in the case of AI, regulation becomes a speed breaker. which is why you're seeing all of this heat around we do not need to regulate heavily. But when competition does not affect progress in a certain industry, regulation becomes a publicly accepted virtue, which is what happened in the case of seatbelts. Right? There weren't a lot of people who were trying to compete to say our cars are better than European cars, or our cars are better than EOS cars, or our seat belts are better. Nothing of that sort. There was no competition going on car safety, which is why, or just what cars provide you as a user. So regulation becomes more accepted, and therefore it becomes more widespread. But competition does affect AI, as we are all aware, certain nations trying to withhold chip access and whatnot. So that was just to reiterate Vivek's point, and also to get home your point on drone tech, because then there are certain sectors where regulation would need to be more heavy. The challenge I see right now, coming back to the AI use case, how do we make India the AI use case capital? We said we were going to do something, and now we're ending up trying to do something else, is where I am at. And I'm not going to give you very, textbookish answers, because I kind of hope that this is an open kind of a discussion or a talk or a chat that we are having. We said that we want to make AI the use case capital of the world, and we heard a lot of, I am sure there are people in this room who have heard those long videos from Nandan Nilekani about making AI the use case capital, and et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, we are still trying to, today, with all the tens of thousands of crores that we are spending on GPU access, we're still trying to become a leader in foundational models again today, with giving access to compute. We are still thinking that we first need to solve that core foundational model problem. We need to give GPU access first, and then we'll start subsidizing all the startups who are already starting to do some core innovation in agri use cases, or healthcare use cases, or manufacturing use cases, retail, consumer, whatnot. So this step-by-step process is, to my mind, really holding us back or slowing us down. You can definitely provide GPU access and compute access to all the startups who are trying to develop LLMs for you, or whether it is speech foundational models or text-to-speech, vision foundational models, etc., etc. But at the same time, you also need to develop an India stack or a DPI kind of a layer, where startups who are willing to train their own SLMs, or who are willing to fine-tune the SLMs that are already available, or leverage the LLMs that are being developed. And those those startups actually can start accessing this compute to develop AI solutions of their own, because as you mentioned, the major challenge is also going to be about their funding and their resources. So if you can start thinking of a DPI kind of a stack, so we can start thinking of it in three critical layers. We all are aware of it. We have identity, we have payments, and then we have data exchange. Of course, there is data responsibility, trust, accountability, etc. But let's stick to these three layers right now. So now I'm getting to kind of how to look at solving some of the challenges that I was alluding to. So if you can have that stack for startups to access an AI model cache. So that you have access to data sets and you have access to AI models. I know AI Kosh that the government has come up with is trying to become a repository of all the data sets. And we were having a chat with Gaurav earlier around his contribution to the AI Kosh as well. And I think it's a great endeavor. But then the number of downloads of those data sets or those models, AI models that are currently present on that Kosh are probably not where we would like it to be. So how do you develop CAN DPI kind of a stack or that platform where you, through subsidies or through compute access, incentivize startups to start making some AI applications for real world use cases. They can either distill the existing models on that cache. Distilling is basically just saying that I will use less resources to use a larger model, and I will use it to train a smaller model, but it basically does the job. So if startups can have access to that kind of a system through verification of identity, through payment, maybe you can give them access to the computes on a pay-per-use basis. And then, of course, there is data exchange requirements that you have incorporated into the system. So if you can already start incentivizing startups and not leaving them kind of their own, or not just focusing on the bigger ones which are developing LLMs for you today, I think that would be really nice.
No, that's interesting. And before I just open it up to the audiences, because I'm sure, and there should be questions. I think that the whole point of making a panel discussion interesting is by inviting questions from the audience. But before I just open it up, I have one question for both of you. I think what we are all trying here to achieve in layperson's language is that we are trying to achieve some sort of autonomy in AI, let's say models, etc. But tell me, what really stops? And you mentioned all the problems, and then you said that probably creating a kind of a DPI stack and going step by step and creating incentives there and etc. could really make for a more compelling scenario. Okay, but tell me one thing: when we talk about AI autonomy, and Vivek, first I'll come to you, and then of course both of you can just tell me your thoughts. I need to understand when we look at the global scenario of the US having about $500 billion investment, in China around a lot lesser, but I think much more than 100 billion. Then you have a whole host of countries, and you have India with a very impressive, I would say, investment. I think the cumulative investment I was checking on Google is about 20 billion, etc. But still, tell me, when you talk about autonomy, I mean, in real terms, how much of an autonomy can we really have, considering that you have these giants all over the world, A, and B, what really stops us, and what really, let's say me as an Indian, as a consumer, to really invest in this very painstaking, step-by-step, asking the startups to come, not sure what kind of innovation they have because they don't have incentive to invest in that R&D. India has an R&D gap, as always. And what stops me from actually taking the shorter cut, which is that I just pay for some already established LLM models, pay a fee, and get my work done? Because I'm asking you this, because even after years and years of push by the government, for example, in satellite communication and all other things, what we actually land up doing is that we pay Maxer, okay, because we didn't invest in time and we get those images. So what stops me as a consumer for taking the shorter cut, which may be actually more market tested, more battle tested, so to say, than to really take this longer cut? Because I'm not sure what kind of autonomy are we talking about here. So please correct me if I'm wrong and help me understand this better, because this is at the crux of a lot of lay people's minds.
I think this is a very complex question. I think India is sort of wrestling with this as well. And we sort of started it with the Make in India conversation. Yeah. That happened in 2015-16, and then we had Atmanirbharta, and now with a lot of the geopolitics that's happening, and I'm sure you're aware of it, between US and India, India and China, US and China, etc. There's a lot of talk around digital resilience. I won't go into the specific incidents, but I think the worry is, what if the US suddenly pulls the rug under the Indian digital landscape, and we're left hanging. The question that you asked, what stops me from using Google Gemini? Nothing stops me. I'm using it, and I'm very happy with it. I think the real risk is, what if I become too dependent on it, and then tomorrow I don't have access to it? Okay, and the one way to do it is build an equally good product, so that which is completely independent, which is completely autonomous. But one has to understand that the story of AI did not start 5-6 years ago in the US. It's been, something that has been sustained since Project Manhattan.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And I think we have to sort of embark on a 100-year plan ourselves if you want to be a dominant technology superpower. It has to start with fundamental research in science and maths. We need to come up with, LLMs are not the full stop to AI. There is going to be another generation of AI, right? This is just the start of multimodal AIs. In fact, if you look at the history of AI before this, the real reason why you're suddenly hearing about AI is because AI in imaging, AI in voice, AI in text were all very separate fields. They were very different mathematics. And multimodal LLMs, they brought it all together, and the research in all fields grew exponentially because you could translate the research in one space into research into the other space, right?
Yeah.
It took a lot of time and effort for us to reach here. There is going to be another generation. And I think that's where India should really be focusing and putting all of its chips. And we are doing it in certain ways. So, for example, in energy, excuse me, we are investing a lot in green hydrogen. Okay, that is the next generation. We have, if you look at the statistics around it, we have, let's say, around 50% of our energy today is being generated through renewable means, but around 25 to 30% that is consumed is only coming from that 50% pie. The reason being, we're unable to connect that to the grid, right? I mean, there are many other reasons, but that's the primary one. And there are financial reasons, legal reasons why we're not able to do it. Now, green hydrogen could be that grid connector. It could be that battery storage killer app. Likewise, we're investing a lot in vaccines. We're investing a lot in the next stage of telecommunications, which is 6G, which will almost unify Wi-Fi and mobile telephony, right? So I think we should really put our minds to what is it that we can invest in and dominate that space. And I do not believe personally that investing in rebuilding what has been invented already is a very wise decision. Okay. In certain critical applications, let's say defense and security or intelligence, maybe you need an autonomous AI. Maybe that's the only way to achieve the trust parameter. Okay. But there are ways around that too. And we can discuss that offline as well. Eventually, I think if you really drill down, there is nothing truly autonomous. Even the US AI systems are dependent on many technologies that come from China, Japan, Korea, Europe, right? The US did not build the entire stack by itself, and they recognize it. I think we should also figure out where in the stack we can dominate and really drill down on that. I think that's the way forward. But if we really want to be the AI superpower of tomorrow, then I feel R&D at fundamental research at physics, material sciences, maths, or computing sciences is the way to go. That's the only way we'll be able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Ayushi, your thoughts on the same question?
Yeah.
And please keep your questions ready because I'm coming to you next.
Thanks, Vivek. I think for some reason I was thinking about electricity. Electricity as a technology. So when it did get invented, you didn't kind of see the effects or the benefits of it ASAP. The benefits became clearly visible probably 2 decades down the line.
Yep.
When everybody, people, society, organizations, governments started to understand what it can do for them. But that 20-year period was full of hiccups because you're still trying to understand your technology, what it can do for you, what it cannot do for you, what are the costs around it. And when it did get invented, the costs were large, as we are probably, expecting. And we're seeing over the last 2 years itself, the costs come down for training as well. So it does take time. So I understand a lot of people keep saying India is late to the AI race, India is late to the AI race. I probably am on the same page, but it comes with this clause of saying that every time something new happened, we took our own sweet time to figure out how to get around it, not just India, but the world as a whole. And India has a tendency to come in some technologies, I won't say all, but come late to the game, but come with a good bang. I'm saying that because there was a time when just a couple of years ago I used to live in Europe, and when I was working in Paris, there were times I used to get my OTPs, banking OTPs by courier. And this was not decades ago. This was pre-COVID. I'm sure things have changed post-COVID. But because the mobile technology and internet connectivity and data usage, all of these technologies were relatively new to us, our banking sector adopted really quick. Our e-commerce platforms adopted really quick. So we were late to the game, but we used the state of the art and we came with a bang. I think a similar thing is happening with quantum now. There is going to be a quantum fab that is going to be instated, I believe, in partnership with IIT Bombay. But then these are things that the US and the UK and Europe established maybe 25 years ago. We're doing it today, but we're doing it with, again, state-of-the-art technology, which is probably not present in those fabs. So we are late to the game, but we are still trying to do it with the new stuff. So we are not in that bad a position. I give these examples to just say that this is still a very exploratory phase that we are in with this technology, and that it is going to take some time. I will, however, Swasti, ask you to repeat your question because in the time that Vivek answered and I put these 2 points, I seem to have forgotten what the question was.
Okay, all right. So in short, my question was that we keep talking about autonomy in AI, and that's what we are trying to build. I mean, we know that the US, China focus more on economic dominance and security, but India's approach to AI is basically to develop more autonomous solutions to all these problems. So I was just asking you to reflect on how really autonomous can India be, and therein I mentioned R&D, and then Vivek came in. Yeah.
Sure, definitely. I think.
And also you can allude to, India's uniqueness. I think that is also something that we wish to understand better. What is our leverage in this game?
Yeah, that's useful because I think, trying to get at that. I think our mantra or our uniqueness going forward could really be SLMs plus inclusion. If we are able to put these two things together, of course, autonomy, a critical part of autonomy is being able to manufacture semiconductor chips, which I'm not too optimistic on for India, for the lack of a better term. But of course, foundational models are equally important. You can keep focusing on that. All I'm trying to say is that it's important, but it's not sufficient. If you can create, coming back to my earlier point, if you can create an ecosystem where startups have resources, government-backed resources, subsidies, incentives to create these SLMs, which do not require as much energy, compute, resources, etc., but they are fine-tuned to a certain sector. So you have an SLM that is catering to a farmer in Telangana. You have an SLM that is catering to maybe a doctor somewhere in a rural area in Madhya Pradesh. So if you have these SLMs sitting, of course, on top of leveraging LLMs. So Bhashini, for instance, you can use that API to integrate it into your SLM, and it will be able to converse with the farmer in his own language or the doctor in his own language. So if you can tap this opportunity, I think that is where our uniqueness can really lie, because DPI, the stack that we have built today, already gives us crazy amount of data about people, and it gives us crazy amount of connectivity with all the people in this country. So I think you can definitely leverage that. And on autonomy, coming back to Vivek's point around, I can use these models, but what if tomorrow I lose access? I'm thinking of one of the SMEs that we visited a while back as part of my work, kind of leading the AI for SMEs work stream currently at the forum. So the SMEs, it's not like they are not trying to catch up with the technology, but there are real hurdles.
Of course.
Right? They get they get the access of one of the cloud services, and now they have migrated all their data from Excels to the cloud. But then the prices keep increasing, and now you are not able to go back because now all your data is on the cloud, and now you're basically stuck. So even if access is not cut off, prices of the services or the cloud that you're accessing, and the corporation can always increase the price of its offerings. So you need autonomy. And again, in that context, SLMs for manufacturing, for predictive maintenance, it becomes really, really useful. So I'm thinking of a really nice quote that an innovation theorist, I'm forgetting his name, mentioned. He was one of the biggest innovation theorists of the last century. He said that disruption happens not because of a technology, but because of ignored end users, right? So that is where our uniqueness can really lie. And as I mentioned, some of those ways to kind of really get there.
Well, that is very content heavy, actually. So we'll take a while to sort of wrap our heads around all these great interventions, but these are extremely useful. Now, please ask your questions. Introduce yourself. Tell me your name, and then please tell me who the question is directed to. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am, sir. Myself, Yomkesh Biswal, and I'm an undergraduate student of physics. And my question is for both sir and ma'am. There is a lot of talk about digital public infrastructure, and as we are proceeding with the time, there is an increasing use of digital infrastructure, and it seems us that it has less cost, it's efficient, but the maintenance cost is ignored, and we don't know who is paying that maintenance cost of this digital infrastructure. And my second question is that public and private partnership. If there is a public and private partnership, they mostly we see that the private players have a mindset of having more amount and increasing revenue, how they would collect more revenue from the public. But if there is public and private partnership, isn't it that the less fees they charge, they would tend to have that we are making a loss, or we should leave it at between? And my third question is, as I am from physics background, that plagiarism in research field, that we should use it as in what disadvantage of AI, or is it helping, or is it not, that the authentic way of research, making a research paper, that reading books and following up the pattern and going through all the processes and making it efficient, or is it that copy paste? And again, if there is plagiarism, there is another AI which will rectify, humanize it, and I think it's creating a problem for the solution.
It is creating a huge problem.
Huge problem.
Ask me. Yes, that's what we are
Thank you.
struggling with. Go
Do
ahead.
you want to start? Yeah.
I think on plagiarism, perhaps I would like to take that one, because you seemed really.
I'm emotional about it, actually, because I'm trying to find ways to motivate students and researchers to not fall for this trap. And of course, but this is not. Maybe I can come to that later. But yes, please go ahead with the more important part of what is related with the panel. I will take your question, but first let the speakers take over.
So your second, I think your second question. So on the first question around DPI, I see it more as a public good, and if the government has to take care of the maintenance and all the expenditure it did in kind of creating it, that seems reasonable.
Feasibility.
Sorry, can you come to the
feasibility? He's saying.
the feasibility of it?
I think his basic thing is that if you involve the private sectors, I mean, they are more profit guided by profit, versus the public model is different. And then how do you basically assess the feasibility of a public-private partnership?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to maybe spend some time on the second question. And whenever these questions come up, I kind of try to do my economist hat kind of comes on, and development econ, in fact, hat comes on, and I try to say, do pilots. Just go for pilots. In some domains, it is not that liked a word, because many people say you'll do pilots, you'll just forget about the outcomes, there would be no scalability, no replicability. But believe me, private sector organizations are also small, big sector independent. They're also looking for ways to really transform their operations. I will give you one example again. I'll go back to the SME example because that is probably the closest one that I can give the example for. So if you look at the Tatas and the Mahindras of the world, they also want to transform their value chains, right? Ultimately, the price they pay to their the price they charge from their customers, or the profits that they're going to have at the end of the day, is going to be a function of how efficient all their downstream suppliers are. So if you're assembling a car somewhere in Tamil Nadu, I take that example because it's an automotive hub, you will see that there are a lot of factories and industries around that area which are producing the nuts and bolts and all everything, all the raw material which ultimately goes into assembling a car. So they are also looking to transform their operations, and within these increasing uncertainties around tariffs, there is clear demand from the private sector to transform their value chains as well. So if you can start thinking of some sandbox kind of environments where these private sector enterprises can start innovating with some of the startups, along with investment from the government or government universities, I think that is a good model to start testing the feasibility of some of the interventions, and then start taking them to scale. For example, T-Hub, Telangana Hub, is a great example of what the Telangana government is trying to do. There are researchers that can guide the startups and innovators on creating these products. There is support from private sector, and ultimately private sector recognizes that if some solution, some crazy solution comes out of that sandbox, they can also deploy it in their own operations. So piloting is a good way, I would say, to start assessing the feasibility and then kind of take it forward.
Vivek, your thoughts, please.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question, because this is I'm talking about the feasibility and the financial aspects of DPI. What if 10 years down the line, corporate A says, you know what, either you buy all of our services or we got to stop access to your national identity system. It's a real fear. It has happened in Africa. Many countries have said that this has happened. So, so the choice really is between a dictatorship and a complete monopolistic capitalist. And I think the way India has done it has sort of found a middle way, but I don't think we found a way that it translates well for other countries, because a lot of that is dependent on trusting the Indian government, right? The financial aspect, there is money. What I'm trying to say is it's really the control, and I think that's what we need to solve for. On plagiarism, I have a different view. Okay, it's abstracted when I use a card. Okay, now is that integral to the process or not? That is up to you. So maybe when you're doing research, does using AI ruin the experience or add to the experience? Okay, now LLMs today are not accurate. There's a lot of research to show that there's a lot of errors and hallucinations that show up. I know that there are, for fake references that are being created, and citations and all of that are happening. You have papers being completely replicated with another author and all of that. So you have to be mindful of such things. But I would not take the moralistic stance against using AI in research right now.
If I could quickly add to that,
There has been a recent kind of comment from one of the co-founders, ex-co-founders of OpenAI, and what he's trying to say is that uh, these models are often very bad generalists as compared to humans. Okay, so I am probably going into a more of a philosophical territory here, which you didn't intend. You intended it to be more technical. But ultimately, all these questions keep coming back to what really will end up distinguishing us from the machine. So we should always kind of, I believe, try to keep more of these philosophical questions top of mind. Um, what is the input that we can offer as humans, which cannot be plagiarized from the machine because it cannot be produced from the machine? And I think increasingly we've been hearing that it is going to be a world of generalists more than specialists. So if unresolved social issues right now, it is not just about 100% plagiarism. Ultimately, of course, we have to make sure that we remain humans, and that's where our strength is. But I understand the nuance of your question, and trust me, we are all, I mean, as a society, as an academic society, all over the world, we are struggling with it. Okay. Anyway, 2 questions, please keep them short. We can also talk over coffee, Yeah. Yeah, 2 questions, one from her and then one more. Hi. Yeah. Divya Kaushik. Okay, Divya. Currently, I'm working as a senior banker with Citi. So, my question is about the dangers of AI. Considering, like, I have 3 major cases that I personally faced. Currently, if you might know, ChatGPT has made ChatGPT Pro free for Indians for a year. So, as a panel discussed, is it for the competition that it has with Gemini, basically to get easy data from Indians, hindering our privacy without our consent? Plus, professionally, I see that in banking industry, AI is getting integrated on much more level than I would expect it to, quite faster than I was expecting it to, considering we are being told to use it to basically train it on things we were manually doing it before. So, is it to replace the employees? Is it like people might lose their job based on AI, and AI will take it over? And thirdly, in the HR system, in the HR industry, I see these days people are struggling with getting a job because of the ATS system. Lot of overqualified candidates get rejected all because they didn't use the correct keywords, or maybe there were too many of the keywords used. So ATS just simply rejects it, and HR doesn't even get to look into it. And thirdly, like when we discussed about the academic part, as you guys said, plagiarism. I would just wanted to add that there is a software curtain that is majorly used in Europe by the professors these days. So it's not about whether we are using the AI or not. It's about it will clearly flag you as using an AI. It was made to ease our lives. Is it really doing that, or maybe creating more hurdles than it was supposed? Very good question. Please put your thoughts together and we'll take another one and then we'll wrap. So, yeah, the other question. Ma'am also has a question. Okay, so we'll collect 3, but I would request you to answer it in as fewer words as possible. Yeah, ma'am. Right. My name is Preetu Maharshi, all professional, personal, philosophical, technical. Uh, we also had, you guys also talked about paranoia a lot for a good time. So, all the times I clicked on some random links, but that is for me to overthink about. My question, simply put, in this context of like data leaks and data protection, is ignorance a bliss, or does awareness itself create healthier paranoia? Thank you. I can totally see getting in the realm of philosophy. Yes, ma'am.
Which parts of the mic? Yes.
Yeah. Lit.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to see such young gathering. I am Anupama Kumar, Senior Technical Director in DBT Mission, wherein we get large set of data for almost all the government scholarship. And being in DBT Mission, we are working on DBT data as well. So for National Scholarship Portal, what we have faced is that we have application and we have collecting the data, but lot of duplicate data, fake data, people trying to get more scholarship entering the data, or just some doubts, uh, getting the data from for the multiple students as such. So cleaning of the data and how DPI can and AI can be utilized. So I'd like to know how well we can utilize AI techniques in putting the data in order.
So I'll start with your question, ma'am, because this is a very live problem with a lot of government entities in India. And especially at the state level, you have a lot of databases that I don't know if you're aware, but in an average state, you have about 300 to 400 benefits claims that are available. It's humanly impossible to manage or monitor the funds. And there are so many schemes and funds where it's underutilized. Forget about leakages. It's just not even deployed, right? And I think the question, you can definitely use technology, AI, there's fuzzy logic. You can obviously seed Aadhaar or create your own ID system as well. But I think the question that you need to ask uh, is it because you have type 1 errors and you have type 2 errors, right? So the type 1 errors is that the wrong person gets it, and the type 2 errors is the correct person gets missed out, right? So which one is the more expensive error for you? Is it more harmful that the wrong person gets a scholarship, or is it more harmful that the genuine person misses out?
General, but that's the both after like
No, you can't. You see, the problem is you can't solve both at the same time. You probably over a period of time, yes, but I think you need to wait it out, or assign weights to that problem and then solve. Because if you try to solve both at the same time, it's going to take a much longer time. Yep. So I think you need to figure out which is the more expensive error for you, and solve for that first. And then once you've got a handle on that, you move to the next type of error. Yeah. So that's generally the strategy that everyone sort of follows. I think uh, if you look at the electoral votes, right, the stance that they've taken is this time that the wrong person should not be voting, right? Where earlier, I think the stance was no matter how many problems exist, the right person should not be denied the right. Right. Those are very, very different approaches to gathering data and identifying errors in the system. Yeah. Right? Um, so coming back to your question on, what are the harms of AI? And I think, see, AI is a tool, yeah, and I think it depends on how you want to use it. And the use case ultimately is the it goes. Your question around are companies using AI to reduce employee costs or employees? Not. I think some companies are. I think that's the harsh reality. Uh, But on the whole, will the economy see a lot of job losses? I don't think that is the case. Okay. Typically, with any technology change or transition, if you go back in history, from the typewriter to the computer, or the steam engine to internal combustion engine, or whatever technology change that happened, uh, there were roles that got eliminated. People still were able to upskill themselves and move up into your job. So I think obviously the pain will be lesser if you take initiative and upskill yourself, but you will be forced to upskill at a point of time. Right now, I don't think anybody in this country or can expect to get a job if they don't know how to operate a mobile phone or a computer. That's the reality. So they are by force, they are required to understand, they may, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think the government should start really emphasizing use of AI in their environments. That will, by force, ensure that all of our employees in the government learn how to do AI. The demand for AI training will sort of go. Right now, they're essentially shoving it out their throats and we need to learn AI. And people attend, don't attend, you're not sure. So by mandating that AI should be used, I think you'll sort of get a lot more positive outcomes. Yeah. I forgot your question was. So, yeah.
It was basically me asking that is ignorance a bliss? Like, are people more confident with themselves just because they don't know about the data protection or like data leaks? cases, or that is it that if we make ourselves more aware, it's going to be better for us, or is it going to create more paranoia?
Yeah, I mean, if you're using technology, you should be aware. If you're not, but if you're using online banking, for example, or credit cards, then yeah, it's okay not to be aware. And if you're going to be using just branch banking, it's fine not to be aware of anything. That's my answer. The answer.
I usually have to like to pitch in, but please keep it short. Definitely, I'm aware we're short of time.
Yeah.
Really second his thoughts on it. Ignorance is really no longer bliss. I think in our own circles, we keep hearing about this clip, this, that click, this link just takes you, and then somebody calls you in the voice of your father or daughter. It's actually 20,000 rupees. So it's no longer bliss, that's for sure. To your question on how it's affecting employment dynamics, definitely over the shorter run, there are going to be job losses, as we're already starting to see, even at the big tech firms, job losses around. Just like the internet, you use it to do your work better and do your work more wholesomely, if that is a word. So I don't think there is a need to be afraid of it, but there is definitely, as Vivek also pointed, a need to upskill yourself on it and learn how it can best help you. For sure.
All right, with that, I think there are more questions in your head, so please ask them over coffee. But right now, we thank you for this very interactive and very, I would say, lucid session. You also made it very easy for the new audiences to understand that nitty-gritty and the complexity. So we thank you once again formally for taking the time out, coming on a weekend and enlightening us with all your thoughts. And may I request you for a picture before I end the panel. And then there's coffee later. Thank you, Mars.